Well, hello. I'm delighted to introduce you to Phil Stiles if you haven't met him already. So, Phil is the lead shrieker and distortionist of the fine doom metal band Final Coil. Now, just to give you a little intro, I had never heard of Final Coil or Phil before in my entire life. And one day I got invited to do like a support gig at a pub. And I turned up with my guitar and blasted out some tracks, and there was no one there except for the other two bands watching. Excellent. I love those kind of gigs. And then these guys came on, plugged in, and my jaw just dropped because I had never heard anything like it. I've heard quite a lot of metal in my time, but they've just got this massive, huge, huge sound. And in such a small bar as well. And it absolutely knocked my socks off. And I was a big fan ever since. And I got talking to them afterwards, and they're all just absolutely lovely people. And Phil. And from there, we've done quite a lot together, actually, haven't we? Done little gigs and things together. And you helped me get some heavy stuff on the Presence album, if I remember rightly. And I've done a few riffs for you here and there. And so, yeah, um,
And more to come, I hope.
hopefully. So there we are. That's your welcome, Phil. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, nice to be here.
So, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks. Final Coil, how would you describe your sound? If someone hasn't heard of you, what do you reckon they should take away?
Always a challenging one because we are sort of somewhat multifaceted. But I think probably elements of progressive rock, elements of what you might loosely term sort of post-metal, and a fairly healthy dose of alternative rock as well. So if you sort of pitched somewhere between Alice in Chains and Soundgarden with elements of Catatonia and Pink Floyd, maybe a touch of Killing Joke, I think you're probably in the ballpark for the most part.
Amazing. Sounds good. So, how long have you been recording and gigging for as Final Coil?
Here's where I get to expose my age. So the initial iteration of the band would have been back in about 2002. I formed it as a solo project in Leicester and met Richard soon thereafter. We were introduced by a mutual friend. Um, but I went off to Poland for just under 5 years. So that sort of hampered any further endeavors. We sort of dallied. We did a bit of stuff sort of remotely, but in those early days of the internet, it wasn't terribly successful. So this kind of version of the band you could trace to 2008. I think we did our first EP in 2011. That would have been Live with Doubt. Followed that up with Closed to the Light in 2006, 2015, I think. And that was the one that sort of caught the attention of a label. And we then went off and did our debut album, Persistence Memory, in 2016 in Italy. So, like most bands, fairly slow burn. In the early days, before we sort of started recording, we basically played anywhere that had electricity and would let us plug in.
Yep.
Sometimes we had an audience. Sometimes, as with the show we played with you, there was a barman and an unimpressed looking dog. But so it's all excellent experience that helps to kind of helps you form your sound, I guess.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've released a trilogy of really cracking albums, and I love the fact that, how more prog can you get? It's one thing having a concept album, but having a concept trilogy, that's bang on, that is. That's really good. I mean, did you plan it as a trilogy from the start?
I wish I could say yes. No, I didn't. When we did the first album, Persistence of Memory, in all honesty, I had no idea if there would be a second album, because it's, as you know, it's very difficult sort of working in the music industry. It's also for bands at this level, it's more often than not expensive. So we had this
Good indeed.
opportunity to go out to Italy. And we spent a month out there recording the album. The pre-production process Basically involved going through all of the material that I'd sort of written and Richard had written up to that point, and choosing the best moments from that would sort of form a coherent album. And the album itself coalesced around this theme of communication and the importance of communication, what happens when that goes wrong, both on a sort of individual level, within families, and also at a societal level. So when we finished the album, I was incredibly enthused. We came back from Italy. I'd basically spent the whole of the sort of second half of the recording just watching these guys working the mixing desk and really trying to sort of follow what they were doing and learn from what they were doing. And I just plunged straight into writing the second album, and it very clearly became apparent to me that the second album was a logical continuation. It had more of a story. I would say that the first album was more thematic, and the second one was fully conceptual. And the second album was then given a further was then driven further by the unfortunate death of my grandmother. She passed away at 101. And amongst her belongings, we found these letters which had been written by her to her family and by her family to her, just after she'd separated from my grandfather. And it tied into this notion of communication and what happens when people are talking at cross purposes. And also what happens when sort of social attitudes replace, I guess, what you might consider to be common empathy. So that really drove the narrative for the second album. And as I finished the second album, and even before we recorded the third one, I'd already started writing tracks for the third record. And anyone who's listened to all three, you'll notice that the end of the first album is where the beginning picks up, of the second one picks up. The end of the second album is where the beginning of the third one picks up. So there are these kind of musical themes, motifs that run through, and then there are these lyrical kind of lifts that run through as well. So there are little callbacks at various different points. So the first album is very much this sort of, I guess it's kind of the most standalone of the three, and it's conceptually sort of themed around communication. The second one dives a little deeper into these ideas of communication, and it looks at how the experiences of the previous generation led to the sort of world becoming the way it is, and within that there were elements of Brexit and elements of Trump and these sorts of things. And then the third album, which again was given a boost very coincidentally by an interview I did with Killing Joke's Jess Coleman, and he was sort of talking about conspiracy theories. It became The World We Inherited, so it became the final part of the trilogy was sort of where we're going, I guess. And so yes, it became from the second album. I had no doubt in my mind that it would be a trilogy, but it wasn't conceived as a trilogy
I
from the
see.
start of the first one.
Oh, it feels very solidly like a trilogy. It doesn't feel like one and then two others on it. It's very well integrated. Yeah, really good. And you've done something really very cool on this album. You've done a vinyl launch.
Yes, and I have
How
it here.
exciting! Oh,
How
you've got
how
him. You got
convenient
him.
that I would just have this. This is our stunt vinyl. It's the one that's getting sort of pulled out to show people.
Oh,
Um, so
amazing.
we've got a nice inlay card with updated artwork and liner notes because I'm a huge geek for those sorts of things. And then most importantly, we've got the vinyl which we had specifically remastered for this release by Russ Russell.
Russ
And
Russell.
it is
Ooh, marble.
Yes, it is. It's
Very cool.
bone and black splattered vinyl, and I think it looks absolutely
That's mint.
stunning. So yeah, it's the first vinyl we've done. It took us a lot of time to get it off the ground because from the start, it was kind of really important to everyone in the band that we did this properly, that we got the mastering right, that we got the art right. We didn't want to just, put out a flat transfer of the CD version, because that would feel, I think, a bit of a disservice to the people who follow us. So we spent a lot of time discussing how we were going to do this, what the funding models would be, and all those sorts of things. And yes, they finally arrived last week. Yola and I have the joy of hand numbering them all in the next couple of days, and it comes out. I think it's the 5th of December, but we're doing a vinyl launch on the 30th of November down in London at the Black Heart in Camden. So people who come to that will be able to get hold of it early if they so choose.
And presumably save on postage and packaging.
Yes, and the other thing we did, the other thing that we did with this is I did an additional bonus EP. It's digital only, unfortunately, but it's an extra 11 track EP. It's got some
That's
live
not an EP,
tracks.
that's an album.
It's got
Unless they're
live
30 seconds
tracks.
long.
Live tracks, two demos, so sort of work in progress, so people can see how the album came together. And it's also got two tracks that I really liked, but which, for various reasons, just didn't quite fit the flow of the album. Um, I'm always writing, as you've probably established already during this discussion, and very often you have these songs that for whatever reason, they just don't quite make the grade. It's not that they're not good enough; it's just that they don't fit the
Yeah,
overall themes. So though I'm really pleased, I've spent a lot of time finishing those. I got Richard to come back and do like new solos, and then mixed and mastered it all. So for the people who come to the show, we're going to be printing out little digital download cards so they don't miss out. So I want to make sure everyone gets, the sort of
wonderful.
the whole package, as it were, of this extended album.
Ah, sounds like a lot of fun. Now you mentioned Russ Russell. Come on, we got to go there. I mean, he's an absolute legend in the metal world. I mean, fancy getting to work with him. Tell me all about it.
So the first two albums we did out in Italy. We spent time over there, and obviously we started to build a bit of a following at that point. And when it came to the third album, we decided we wanted to try a slightly different direction. Absolutely nothing against the guys out there. Real Sound Studios was fantastic, and the guys there did a fantastic job. We just wanted like a different voice to help steer the album. And Yola and I were sat at home listening to the last Dimmu Borgir album, Aeonian, and we sort of looked at one another and we're like, look, it's got that heaviness, it's got that kind of grandiosity, it's got the electronic elements as well. And wouldn't it be great? And of course, like all wouldn't it be great discussions, it kind of got parked there. And then a couple of days later, I think we were possibly drinking a little bit too much wine, and wouldn't it be great turned into send an email, because the worst case scenario, he says, "Who are you?" or "No, go to hell." It can't hurt, right? So we sent an email, and it kind of went back and forth a little bit. I think we got two or three responses, and because he's so immensely busy, this is the guy who's worked with Napalm Death and Amorphis and Dimmu Borgir. This is he's a legend in his own right. Yola said, "Look, he's just down the road. Why don't we go and meet him? We'll have a drink, we'll have a chat, and we'll see where that goes." So sent him a message, and we're like, "Yeah, we'll have a pint. And can only really do an hour." So okay, fine. Went down, went into the pub. 10 pints later,
Oh dear.
I, I found that the ground was spinning, and Russ had agreed to produce the album. So so that's how we brought him on board, and you get
I'm making
these
notes. I need to do this.
you get these cliches about producers becoming, the sort of the unofficial member of the band, but it was really true. He listened to the demos very carefully. When we went in, he had some very specific suggestions to make. Not too many in the first instance, but there was one song in particular, "The End of History," which was going to be about 8 minutes long. And Richard and I had this really like typical sort of progressive overload idea. We wanted
Yep.
to weave different sonic themes from the previous two albums into this lengthy outro. And the problem was that we each each bit in itself was really cool, but we couldn't find a way to finish it. So we just kept adding more and more bits on the end, and it ended up almost tripling the length of the song. So we go into the studio, still not 100% sure how to finish it. And Russ sat us down. He said, "Right, this is where we fall out." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He said, "You need to cut this. It finishes here. This stuff, useless." It's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." So what was like a 10-minute song became a 3.5 minute song, and he was absolutely bang on. And it was those sorts of little things. You just need
Well, that's so
someone
precious,
who
isn't
isn't
it?
insane
Yeah.
to to come in and tell you not to do stuff.
I think as an independent band, an independent artist, it's very easy to lose the bigger picture when you're doing an album. You get so involved in the minutiae of this, that, and the other, and that would never have occurred to me just to cut a huge section off a song because you get so close to it, don't you? I mean, that's just precious. That's really good. Yeah, fabulous. And so, how else did he challenge you? I bet that couldn't have been the only way.
The other ways really were more to do with performances, sort of,
Oh,
okay, let's try and add in an additional layer here, or I mean, even down to really nitty gritty stuff where, I've always sort of incorporated a lot of feedback into our music. Russ had me kind of standing in the room with the amplifier pointing in different directions with different guitars, just trying to get exactly the right tone and the right sound. And for me personally, it was really about vocal performance. I think for various reasons there was quite a strong vocal progression from album one to album three. And in album one, I was actually recovering from sort of acid reflux, which had basically killed my voice. And I lost my voice for the best part of about 6 months. It was sort of
oh,
down to this whispery husk. And it only started to get better when the doctor put me on some industrial strength antacids. So when we did Persistence of Memory, I was still really struggling with my voice, and I think you can sort of hear it. It's there, but it's not as strong as I would have liked it to be. By the time we did the second album, I'd spent about a year and a half doing vocal lessons with a tutor, um, really good tutor, classical music. So tended to look a little bit askance at the things that I was asking her to help me with. But she was really, really good and really, really patient. And just basically, being in a room singing for an hour at a time, just belting out notes low and high, it sort of re-established my range and opened things back up again. So that was really, really good. And then by the time we got to the third record, I was doing all the sort of vocal warm-ups and things in the studio. And Russ was just sort of by my side, basically said, okay, try that, but maybe you could do that with a bit more grit. Maybe you could try it a little bit more like that. And because I had that sort of confidence underneath it, it ended up, I think, being probably the best vocal performance I've done on record.
wonderful.
Um,
I mean,
and
that's
then there
one
was just
thing.
the,
That's one thing
oh,
is
sorry.
very noticeable at Final Coil. You've got a style of harmonies that is really unique. I mean, if you hear it, you think, "Oh, that's Final Coil." And there's not many bands that do that. Um, is that something that just came naturally and you fell into it, or is that something you kind of had to work on?
I would say it was natural. I mean, I was doing it before Final Coil. I was hugely influenced by Alice in Chains. When that was how I learned to play guitar, was with a video copy of Alice in Chains Unplugged, and I
Oh,
sat
yeah.
there and I basically was just pausing it. And if you're young enough, sorry, old enough to have a video recorder, you'll remember that pausing a video means there's a lovely line down the middle of the screen. But I was pausing it and just trying to work out what Jerry Cantrell in particular was playing. So that kind of idea of vocal harmonies, and actually it's less talked about, but Nirvana had some really cool vocal harmonies as well. Dave Grohl put in some really nice harmonies in things like Heart Shaped Box, um, and All Apologies and things like that. So the idea of harmonies was always there, and I was always doing it. And it just happened that when I recruited Richard, who's an excellent vocalist in his own right, it became just this thing that we did. And I think more often than not, we'll sort of sit there and really enjoy putting layer after layer of harmonies on. And yeah, I love it. I love doing it. And even that the solo piece, obviously, that I did with you, it was all about how can we build those harmonies? How can we create? And I think you gave me about 20 layers of harmonies for the Wanderer, and it ended up sounding fantastic. But I love that sort of stuff. I think it's very interesting. And I think because I'm not classically trained in any way, I mean, Richard could tell you what the intervals are. I don't have a clue. So I think sometimes our harmonies are a little bit unusual because I just go with what sounds good in my weird mind rather than trying to work out what it should be.
Wonderful. I mean, for some of my listeners, you're going to be really much heavier than they're used to listening to. And for others, you won't be as heavy as the stuff they listen to. I've got such a wide range of people that who somehow listen to my music, which is amazing. But I mean, when we think of heaviness, to me, you're a heavy band. There's just this. But if someone was going to ask you, what does heavy actually mean? How do you go about making a song heavy? What does it involve?
I have no idea.
Is it
I've never
is it
really
just volume?
I've never really thought of us as particularly a heavy band, or at least not in that way. I mean, we play with a lot of metal bands, and I mean, I love heavy metal. I listen to a lot, and we've been fortunate enough to be really embraced by the metal community. But it was never sort of my intention to make sort of quote unquote, I guess, heavy music as such. And some of our stuff is really quiet and really restrained. I think by and large, the music more often than not is dictated by the themes and thematically what we're dealing with, communication and its fallouts and sort of socio-political elements. It is heavy stuff. So, to take one example, The Growing Shadows was written about 6 months before the January 6th insurrection in America, but that was very much the idea that I had in my head. And that song was influenced much more by sort of the no wave and sort of alternative art rock artists like the Swans and Sonic Youth. If you listen to it, it's just one riff that just repeats over and over again, but then it's like repeat and augment. So you've got more and more layers building on and more distortion. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm just a noise maniac. I mean, once it starts, I find it very difficult to stop. And I remember David Gilmour sort of saying there's nothing quite like sort of the physicality of playing a riff and almost being able to lean back into that sound that's pouring out of your amp.
I love
But
that.
yeah, I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't say that I think in terms of heavy. It's sort of trying to create the right sonic landscape for the ideas that we're trying to put across. And more often than not, it seems it's a kind of wall of noise kind of thing. But yeah, I suppose if you go back to my influences and my biggest influences, they're actually not necessarily metal artists. They're more alternative rock artists who tended to be, I guess, very sort of loud and abrasive, but heavy in a different way. Like the
Yeah,
Swans or
yeah.
Sonic Youth or Fugazi or Sebadoh, those sorts of bands.
I, in some ways, we've got a lot in common in our music. Although in some ways they sound quite different, but we both have a lot of dynamics, ups and downs. You don't have, there's times where you've got a wall of sound coming at the listener, but it's not for the whole record. And I think that gives it much more punch when it comes in. I think if you've got a record that's just, ah, you, you actually just turn it down a little bit. You know what I mean? And it loses that shock and awe factor. And that's yeah, I like the kind of that dynamic quality that you've got there. And I also think you said the word landscape there, and I think it's almost cinematic in places. Really, I think you could definitely have. Um, it could definitely be like theme music for an epic film. I would like to. What kind of film do you think it would be? This would be interesting.
Or some awful Ken Loach movie or something. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, when I write, I think a large part of it is that I do have these themes in mind and I do have these stories in mind. And again, I mean, to give you an idea, it wasn't a film, but one of the centerpieces of the second album is a song called Imaginary Trip. And that song, as I said, a lot of it was about communication, but that was one song that I wrote directly in tribute to my grandmother. And to achieve that song, I just had in my mind a walk that we used to do around the cliffs of Durlston, which is just above Swanage in Dorset. And the guitar riff, the vocals, the melodies, every aspect of it was what came to my mind when I sort of pictured that walk and going along the path on the cliffs and looking down into the sea.
Fabulous.
And that was my sort of tribute to her. And always, I've got these. So again, the growing shadows. I did have this idea of kind of masked people, not necessarily in the capital, because I mean at that time it was far too fanciful an idea. But this idea of sort of insurrectionists, and even the title, the growing shadows. It has that kind of ominous, the coming storm kind of vibe to it. Wires, which is about Morgellons syndrome, which is a sort of psychosomatic illness where people imagine that they've got sort of fibrous um, extrusions coming out of their body. It's one of the things
Oh,
that Jazz was talking about in quite a lot of depth. Again, that kind of very stabby riff to me was kind of the sonic approximation of kind of having wires, bursting out of your body. And actually, that's the t-shirt I'm wearing now as well. Now I realize it.
no,
Um,
I love that track. And when it, oh, it's like a punch. It's yeah,
yeah,
stab you
yeah,
with
and,
the
and
word.
that's it. So always there's this sort of idea. So I guess if it was movie, it would definitely be something sort of slow and probably with quite a lot of nature. And I don't know, something like The Thin Red Line, Terrence Malick's strangely beautiful but very sort of heartbreaking war epic would be the sort of thing, I guess. But yeah, that's the kind of ideas that I have sort of floating through my mind, I guess.
Interesting. So, you're very much an album guy, aren't you? I mean, I can see behind you. You've got a huge collection of albums. I just pointed out Pulse earlier, didn't I? I could see. I was thinking, oh, I had that record, and I used to blink on my shelf for years and years and years. I think it's dead now, mine. Oh, great album, super album. Um, how important is it to you for people to experience your albums as a full album, or are you just happy for them to chop them up and put them on playlists and share them about? What's your feelings on the album as
I,
as
I,
a concept?
the reality of the modern world is you can't control what your listeners do, and to that extent, I am grateful if they choose to listen to one song or 100 songs. That said, if I had a choice, I would always rather that they were listened to as albums because they were conceived as albums. And I think it's that inevitable thing that where you tend to default to the thing perhaps that meant something to you growing up. It meant a lot to me to read when I was young. It still does, and I can see all the wonderful books behind you on the shelves there. And equally, it means a lot to me to listen to something as a complete piece. And I love it when bands take the time to create an album that flows from start to finish, where potentially the tracks, sort of fade in and out of one another, where there are musical motifs. And Pink Floyd are one of my favorite bands of all time. And of course, that's something that they very much perfected. And there's a lot of sort of progressive rock bands that again, it has a sort of symphonic sweep. And as pretentious as it is, and I know that it is, and I don't care. That's kind of what I want to do with our music. I try to make sure that there's this ebb and flow. You mentioned dynamic, and 100% I agree. I think when you've got an album that is just heavy all the time, and I've got plenty of albums that are like that, after a time it has an almost anesthetic effect. I mean, I absolutely love like Slayer and Napalm Death, but I can manage about 40 minutes of it before I just need something else that is going to sort of cleanse the palate almost.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you can go back to being bludgeoned over the head again. Um, and I think, the best albums in my collection, the albums that mean the most to me, are the ones that have either sort of that ebb and flow, they take you on a journey, or they're the ones that have some sort of contiguous idea. And of course, in a perfect world, that is how people would experience these records. So, I don't like streaming. I don't think that it is a satisfying way of experiencing music for me. Because you don't connect with the artist, you don't even necessarily know what you're hearing half the time. Whereas taking a CD, taking a record, it's a conscious choice. And I think there is a danger, I think, that we're almost automating ourselves away from the things that give us the most pleasure. We read in teeny tiny little bites on our phones. We stream music. We just dip in and out of shows. Whereas I think perhaps before a lot of this, we did experience things in a more complete form, and it was a more wholesome meal, if you like. And so yeah, I think that's how I would like our albums to be experienced. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this on vinyl, is it's my sort of tip of the hat to that. Always I would preference CDs and vinyl and tapes over any form of digital download. For me personally, even listening to a complete record on a download, it doesn't feel as real to me. It doesn't feel as satisfying to me as if I'm sat listening to something with the artwork and the box and the liner notes in my hand. But again, I'm aware everyone experiences things in a different way, and of course,
Sure,
I'm
for sure.
grateful to anyone who listens to our music. But my final word on this rambling album praising monologue is that I have noticed that the majority of our fans, they do seem to opt for the physical options. A lot of people do go through our Bandcamp to get the CD, and I think possibly we are the sort of band where it's difficult to get a complete picture of who or what we are through one or two songs. Something like Chemtrails or Wires, yeah, it's us, but only one facet of what we do. And I
Absolutely.
don't think you'd have a
Totally.
very good idea of what we are live if that's all you've heard. In fact, potentially be quite disappointed when you came and found that there's meandering 10-minute prog songs about country walks in the middle of it.
Oh, I love it. So, moving on from there, hold up your record again. See, I love records. I just like getting them out. You can smell them. There's that crackle of the cellophane. You have to open a box. You have to put it on. You have to put the needle on. It's a physical thing. It's not just your ears. It's all of your senses. I don't lick them, so it's probably not that sense, but you know what I mean. It's a bit like having a nice meal delivered. That's all very well, and it probably tastes great. But actually, if you've spent an hour enjoying cooking it or with a friend, and then you sit down and you're sharing it with a family, that's a different experience, even though it could be the same food. So for me, I do agree with you on that, and I just love having big artwork. I mean, come on. So talk about the artwork. Who designed it? Did it come out of your head?
Well, only in the extent that I had the sort of the I provided the initial brief, but no, all credit to Andy Pilkington, who, again, for metal fans, is probably going to be someone who's very well known. He's done artwork for Skindred, he's done artwork for Flotsam and Jetsam, and countless other metal bands. And unfortunately, my brain has just blanked as to who the others would be. But he goes under the aegis of Very Metal Art, and he's incredibly well known. He does the artwork for Uprising, the Leicester Metal Festival. He does a lot of the art connected to Bloodstock, I think. So yeah, he's just this incredibly well known artist. He's very capable, very generous with his time, and very willing to kind of sit down and listen to sort of our madcap ideas. But he's done the artwork for all three of the albums. The first
I love
two,
your artwork.
I
Those
would say, where are they? Here they are. Oops. The first two, I mean, this one is Persistence of Memory, and this one was completely 100% his idea. We
I
we
mean,
didn't.
it's shocking, it's brutal, and it's beautiful at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's stunning, isn't it? And you
It
don't
really is.
necessarily see the darkness of it, but it is. It's such a cool image, and he basically, oops, he
And
says straight away.
I remember when I came to that first gig, you had it on a big
Oh,
vinyl
we had it on the backdrop, didn't we? Yeah.
backdrop, and it was just immense. It was so cool.
So yeah, he basically, that was him 100%. The second album, we had a bit more of a detailed brief because the story was more fleshed out. So the second album is this, and
Yep.
that's the World We Left Behind Brothers. And as you can see, it's the past, looking rather lovely. And actually, the third album is that same image, but the world has clearly gone to hell. So we've got the sort of the rose-tinted past and the glorious industrial hellscape that we've inherited. Um, so the second and the third one, we did have a bit more of a detailed brief, but that's not to detract from the fact that he, took words on a page and created these pieces of art, and I'm really really pleased with our collaboration. It's been such a pleasure to work with him.
It
Um,
does fit the music brilliantly. I think they're really good. I think you've missed a big trick. The main problem with your artwork is that you can read your logo. So you're obviously not a metal band.
or not certainly not in the death or black metal sphere. That's certainly true.
That's it. That's it. Amazing. So, how much AI did you use in your album, Phil?
Are you trying to get me to spit
Yes.
or swear? Um, yeah, I mean, anyone who knows me will know that I am actively antagonistic towards AI. There's a lot of discussion about AI in all sorts of different arenas. I've worked in education for a large portion of my professional career, and I've heard people say things like, "Oh, it's no different to a calculator." I would say that these sorts of perceptions are entirely false. with a calculator, you can put numbers in and it will spit an answer out, but you can't necessarily understand the process behind it. You can't do the calculations, and the calculator can't spit that out for you. So to an extent, you still need to have a certain amount of knowledge, and you still need to have a certain amount about you to be able to operate things like brackets or, sort of more complex calculations. It's not as simple as people make out. Now with AI, up to a point, you put something very basic in, you get something very complex out. The problem with that is that it takes away your critical faculties. And what I'm seeing more and more, and I saw with my students back when I was teaching, I see now with even professionals who are using AI to kind of cut corners, is that the critical faculty to say, actually, that's not right, or that's out of date, or in some cases, that's just plain wrong, seems to have just vanished overnight. And I think, that sort of lack of creative faculty is one arm of my objection towards AI. And the other is that, art itself is a creative endeavor. And again, this is where the pretension comes flooding out. But the thing is, like, as human beings, the best thing you can do is to aspire to something. You can aspire to be a guitarist, you can aspire to be a singer, you can aspire to be a drummer, you can aspire to paint or draw or to dig a hole in the garden and plant some roses. It really doesn't matter. But what matters, even if you're not successful, is the endeavor that you've put in, and what comes out at the end can be truly wonderful, and I'm not a particularly good guitarist, but I think that I'm good at what I do. At least I like to think so. And I enjoy it. And I enjoy trying to be better on every record. If there was an AI program that could do all this for me, that I could press a button and go la 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 la, and it'll turn it into a guitar riff, I don't want to know about it, because that takes away the endeavor. It
Yeah,
takes away any form of enjoyment. And it's not me creating something. I don't care what anybody says. It's not something that is making anybody into an artist. It's not democratizing art. It is taking endeavor and passion out of creativity. And it's basically just taking art to the lowest common denominator. And at the end, it's like with copywriting and all these other things, you've probably noticed already on the internet, everywhere you look on Facebook or, God help us, LinkedIn or Twitter, sort of over half of what you're seeing now is stuff that's clearly been just chat GPT'd.
absolutely.
Some of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it is just so anodyne that it doesn't really have any meaning or depth or passion, even when it's purporting to talk about issues that have emotional depth. And that's because there isn't anything behind it. It's empty. And the problem is we're going to see a lot of very vacuous, very lazy people just churning out stuff and patting themselves on the head for their ingenuity. It's not. It's a failure. It's a failure of art. It's a failure of human endeavor. And it's a sickness. I think that's probably my point in a nutshell.
Love it. I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is, for me, music is goes back to what you've been saying. It's communication, and it's heart to heart. For my music is all this mess inside this body. I don't know what to do with it. Here it is. Someone else may connect with it. And that's my heart's desire when people listen to my music, is they connect to that emotional. And some of the emotions are joy, and some of them are misery and pain or loss, or just the sheer being alive. But it's about communicating that heart to heart thing. And it's like in a gig, when you play a gig and you can see the audience there, and you get that feedback loop of you're playing, they're responding. It affects the way you play, and it becomes more than just the sound as if you played it in an empty room, if that makes any sense to you. Um, and it's the same thing, and I don't think we're ever going to get that with AI. I'm going to stop spitting now too.
No, it is that, and and I understand the frustration perhaps of someone who struggles with being able to play or to whatever. But that's the thing, everyone has abilities. It's not innate to people to be a good singer or a good guitarist. It's work at the end of the day. And you either have the time and the will to put that work in, or you don't. And of course, there are exceptions, and I'm sure we can all find exceptions where someone has some issue that is precluding, and maybe their AI might have some element of a role. And obviously there are other things where I think AI would be very good. And so, for example, number crunching or identifying sort of patterns within things like heartbeats that would predict heart attack. Wonderful, great. This is where this sort of technological evolution does have a really sort of powerful role
So
and could make us better.
let me give you just to be awkward and irritating. Okay, we've got a new plugin coming out, and it takes your vocals and using AI EQs them really nicely, like a top engineer has done them. It's still you singing. We've got a problem with that? Is it thin end of the wedge?
I actually do, for the same reason as the sort of the recording or anything else. I spent the last 6 months or so doing the mix and master of the EP, and I would say I've done it to the best of my ability. During that, I did some little EQing courses, but what emerged is the EP is the product of my hearing and my listening and understanding what I wanted it to sound like and making it as good as I could. And actually, in some cases, those happy accidents that come from not knowing what the hell you're doing, and
Yeah.
you tweak this or tweak that, and suddenly it's like, oh shit, that's excuse me, oh no, that sounds really good. And to me, again, it's the human process. You sort of think about top engineers. Well, a top engineer, every single record that they do is different. It is the product of their experience and their ability up to that point.
And
And
taste.
frankly, top engineers don't just do the same things over and over again. They may start from the same place, they may have a base level of settings, but every record is going to be different according to their understanding of the emotion and power that's gone into that record. So, this idea that AI on an algorithm can make your record sound like a top engineer, no, it can't. It can approximate, and it can approximate. You can probably make your record sound like Nevermind, for example, or make it sound like the Black Album. Great, congratulations. You've taken an idea that someone else had and you've now turned it into something of yours. I don't have any respect for that at all because it's not you. Doing a record is it's the combination of all of these people, your engineer, the mixer, the mastering engineer, every single person in the chain doing the best they can and employing their emotion, their hearing, their understanding, their technology to make this thing. And it's flawed, and sometimes it goes wrong, but the end result is actually
Human.
absolutely 100% yours, and that's
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Love it. Yep. It's a
So
human.
yeah, no, even the plugins, no, I don't use them. I see them pop up. They Facebook is trying to sell them to me on a day-to-day basis, and no, I don't use them.
Good man. So you've done your trilogy. It's out. It's even on vinyl. You're going to have done your release after the 30th of November. Is that it? I mean, are you done? Is that it? Your Magnus Opus, you can
Hell
retire.
no.
What's going
Uh,
next then?
So we have an EP finished, and that EP is it's actually I'll break this on your show. It's called the 1994 EP, and it's basically this idea of just wanting to have a little bit of a cleaning of the closet. We had a couple of songs that just never really fitted anywhere that I loved that were very punky, and then I wrote two more in the similar vein. And it really felt like I was kind of harking back to my teenage years, if someone of 45 can do that. So it became this just lovely little punky thing, and I thought, you know what, it's a cool standalone. So we've done that, and we've done that with Graham Hopkins, who was the drummer on Therapy's Semi-Detached album, which is one of my favorite Therapy albums. Um, and we're just in the process of finalizing that. That's going to come out soon. I've finished the fourth album. In fact, I finished the fourth album some time ago, and we're actually in the process of recording that already, but I'm not going to give you any details on that.
Oh, that is
And
exciting.
I am now 12 tracks in to the fifth album. Um, because I got a little bit overexcited, and sort of COVID sort of slowed down our ability to actually do the sort of producing, but it didn't slow down my ability to write. So I've been very busy working on those things. And then I've also got a solo record, which is finished, and that's going to be coming out at some point in the next few months, whenever I can afford to get it pressed. And then I've got another solo record, which I've finished the demos for, but which I'm now working with a couple of other musicians on to get it kind of over the line. So yeah, there's a lot happening
Gosh,
actually.
that is, yeah, that is huge. You seem to have a vast backlog of songs that you need to get out. Yeah.
It never stops. You know, it's like Buzz Osborne from the Melvins. You know, you're if you're not writing, you're singing into your phone when you're walking down the street, or yeah, and it all goes into a file, and it all has uses at some point. I do have a file also marked "What are you thinking?" but that's I keep that to one side.
Well, I'm feeling even more grateful that you took the time out to add a few things to presents now. Now you were that, knowing you were that busy. So
Well,
you're,
that was a huge amount of fun.
I really, oh gosh, when the stuff came back, I was thinking, what is this? This is this is mental and wonderful. I listened back to a couple of it, bits of it, the other day to just prepare for this, thinking, what did he actually do on there? And some of it is actually a lot chunkier than I remember when we were writing it. Listening back, thinking, "Oh, crumbs! Maybe I'm getting up to my old age or something." Hmm. I mean, your solo stuff is really varied. I think it's got lots of electronic bits on there. Almost every song is a different style. It's all definitely you, but it's huge range of influences. I can see why now, looking at your CD collection there. I I really, I mean, that anchorite, that was the right word, isn't it? Um, Record is really charming. It surprises you at every turn, and I love it. I love it. Really good. And I only found out what it actually meant the other day, which, considering I read, I should probably have known before then. Isn't it funny? I mean, my wife always laughs at this, but when I met her, I didn't know what bunting was, and she's taken the rip ever since. Just for some reason, I'd never come across the word.
But
Anyway.
for the uninitiated, bunting could be something truly awful. But alas, alas, it is the province of provincial fairs for the most part.
Um, what keeps you going? I mean, why do you do this mad thing? You, the amount of material that I churn out is not fair. I don't mean churn out. But that's what I mean. The amount of material that just comes flowing out of you. What is inspiring this? What is making you do it?
Honestly, don't know. I mean, I always have. I think you know. I
Is
fell
it
head
fun?
over heels in love with music when I was, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. And right from the start, you know, from sort of experiencing some of the classical music that my parents listened to hearing the Beatles for the first time, to hearing Queen for the first time. It's something, there's something so magical about it. I always think it's probably the most unsung form of art, in a way, because people, it's seen as, in many cases, as being just this kind of popular thing, but it, you know, the amount of heart and soul and work that goes into making an album, and then the amount of time that a great album will be with you throughout your life. You know that there are records on that collection that maybe I've heard 4 or 5 times. There are records back there that I've probably heard 105 times, and you know, you will always find something new. You'll always find something to inspire you, and I think that crosses over into the creative instinct. You know, I don't like, and I have never liked being passive. I can spend a bit of time watching movies, and I think, you know, a great movie is every much a treat as a great album. I can spend time playing computer games sort of occasionally if I've got moments to kill. I love reading, but there's something about creating, even if you don't make something complete, even if it's just a riff or it's just an idea or a sketch, it's there's something magical about it, and I love spending that time. And I never really know when something is going to move from being a sketch to being a completed song. It's very rare that I sit down with the conscious sort of idea, today I'm going to write myself a song. It's much more that I'll sit down and I'll sort of pick up a guitar and start footling about, and it's like, oh, actually that's kind of cool. I don't think I've heard that before. And then you know, you whack it into the computer, and sometimes from that it will flow and become a complete song within an hour. And sometimes it'll just sit on the hard drive, and 2 years later I'll come back to it, and it's like, oh, that's really interesting, and then the next idea is there. But one thing that I've always noticed, which is maybe a bit weird, I don't know how other people write, but as soon as I start the first bit, I usually hear the other parts in my head, and then it's a case of trying to play catch up with myself to get those ideas then back into the computer before they kind of disappear. And that's the reason why when I'm walking in the morning, I take my phone with me, not because I like having a phone with me, but because it's like a little recorder. And I'll be walking down into the countryside, and the cows will be looking at me, and I'll be going boom, 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 and now it's in C. Dun, 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 dun. And the cows are looking at me going, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, don't worry about me, it's fine. By the way, I'm quite fond of mustard. And off we go. I don't know. I'm always kind of my brain is hyperactive. I don't know. It's just sort of always chattering at me. And any time that I have the opportunity to create something, whether it's writing a lyric or writing a riff or recording something, it's a pleasure to me. That's how I want to spend my time. It's how I like spending my time. I don't want to be passive. I don't want to just flump down on the sofa and watch something, except unless I'm feeling ill or something. And yeah, my brain wouldn't let me, even if I wanted to. I start getting uncomfortable. I was like, I gotta do something now. And
Brilliant.
it's either that or sort of annoy Yola by poking it. So it's like, go upstairs and play the guitar because that way I don't get killed.
It is a risky business. I just love your energy, Phil, but it comes across when you're playing live for sure. I mean, that first gig, I'll never forget it. It was just, there's just these people wandering about, and one of them looked like possibly she might be a librarian, and then someone looked like there might be a antique bookshop owner, and then they all took their hair down, got on stage, and boom, they just kind of turned into superheroes or something. It was like, oh, this is amazing. And then they came off and turned into librarians and bookshop owners again and put their hair back up in ponytails. And I just, and the community that you've built is really, really lovely. The people in it are absolutely super. And I think from the outside, if you go to a metal gig and you got everyone dressed up to the nines in goth outfits and all that. It could be a little bit intimidating for people, but I've just found that they're generally the most lovely people that you've come across, and it's been eye-opening, really. And the bands that you work with are all really super and lovely as well. Really good. Cool, I'm out of breath from the stairs. Sorry about this. So first of all, where can people get this record? Where can they find your music? Where can they stream? No, we're not going to stream it. Where could they order it?
If they must stream it, that it is on all the streaming platforms. It's one of the things that labels do insist upon, unfortunately. But yes, as far as getting hold of it, the vinyl is exclusively from our Bandcamp, which is finalcoilrock.bandcamp.com. Our CDs are available on Bandcamp, eBay, Amazon, Rare Waves, and a whole bunch of other sort of independent retailers.
Lovely.
And downloads from the same sorts of places. Amazon definitely stocks them, but obviously for us, Bandcamp is our favored sort of
Yeah,
method
we love
because it's more
Bandcamp.
directly to us. And of course, we as jobbing musicians, we don't actually make any money, but we do plow what comes in all back into more exciting things. So it's actually incredibly appreciated when people take a moment to buy our stuff, for sure.
Yeah, so please, if you listen to this, check them out, buy something, listen to it, and enjoy it. I'm telling you, if you like my music, this is a little bit different, but it's got the same heart and soul behind it, and I think you will like it. Go in with an open mind, and I think you'll love it. So, last question. Someone has gone and bought your vinyl. They've gone into a room, turn the lights down, they've got a nice glass of wine. They chill. They put it on. They drop the needle on there. What would you like them to feel as this music comes on?
Wow, what a question. Yeah, I think I've sort of touched on this before, but this is the thing, isn't it? You can't when I started writing music, I think I had it in my mind that I could control how people listened to it and how they would feel. And I realized very quickly, sort of reading reviews, that everybody experiences music according to their own sort of particular experiences. Something that I may feel as being, I don't know, dark or depressing or moody, someone else may see as being completely joyful. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about music. It's incredibly subjective. And I've sort of over the years, I've moved the other way to the point where I'm actually a bit coy about what I would like people to take away from it. I think if you wanted to, you could imagine that the landscapes that are sort of projected through the music and the lyrics. I think you could sort of contemplate themes of communication or how society has become so polarized. I think you could equally simply get an adrenaline rush from the riff to chemtrails. And all of these responses are equally valid. Um, so I guess, I don't really want them to feel anything. I think as long as they feel something, if that makes sense.
Wonderful.
I
Good.
don't I would never want to be too didactic about it because once you tell people what they should feel, it's very hard for them to then step away from that and interpret it the way they should. I think, sometimes I read a lot of press about bands I like and interviews with things, and nine times out of ten, it's really interesting, sort of learning a bit more behind it. But if it does go down too much, oh yeah, we really wanted them to feel like this. You're like, you can't unthink it, you can't unread it, you can't unhear it, and suddenly the song changes what it means for you, and not necessarily in a good way. So, yeah, I just hope people do listen and feel whatever feeling that may be, as long as it's
Love
not
it.
disgust. I'd rather not have disgust, but
I love that. Phil Stiles, you're a scholar and a gent. Looking forward to working with you.
thank you
So.
so much for your time.